keen to really understand why you think so many local authorities are eager to bring their IT services back in-house.
Multiple challenges: budgetary, legislative, security, governance. They're looking to achieve efficiencies wherever they can. Bringing that back in-house is not a minor hurdle. The service transition itself can be tumultuous.
I think you can underestimate the benefit of a roadmap and the strategy.
It's pointless trying to do much of anything without that golden thread between the business objectives, the key IT objectives, and how you deliver those from a technology and service viewpoint.
Hello and welcome to the Cantium Podcast in partnership with Public Sector Focus. My name is Matt Cooper, Technical Account Director at Cantium, and I'll be your host for the Cantium Podcast today. With me is Marc Milne, Cantium's Lead Account Architect. Today we're going to be discussing how local authorities can regain control of their IT operations and the challenges that they may face along the way. So, Marc, I'm keen to really understand, I suppose, why you think so many local authorities are eager to bring their IT services back in-house.
I think with local authorities, they're subject to multiple challenges: budgetary, legislative, security, governance, and with the ever-increasing cost of services across the board, they're looking to achieve efficiencies wherever they can.
So do you think that probably local authorities feel like they're maybe disconnected from their IT and that maybe they want to feel closer to what's going on and have more control in a way?
Absolutely. One of the issues with either hybrid or fully managed services is that there's this disconnect between the service they receive, the amount they pay for those services, and the responsibility and accountability for those services. So they perceive going back in-house as a great way to address those multiple issues.
So do you think that also alongside that, they probably perceive it as a cost benefit if they do take it back in-house? And do you think that's maybe one of the main drivers?
Yeah, absolutely. It has to be for local authorities, given the budgetary challenges they're constantly under, especially over the last couple of years. However, they generally have to be cognizant of the fact that there are efficiencies in managed services, hybrid services, which they will not be able to take advantage of, and specific areas of expertise, which longer term may cost them more, bringing them in-house or bring in additional resource to supplant their in-house resource to deliver those services or that capability.
I suppose really in a way, economy of scale springs to mind a little bit, I suppose, with MSPs. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Say if you're paying for a security expert full-time, that's going to be a massive budgetary hit, whereas bringing in a specialist for, several days a month is much more cost-effective. So it's about assessing those benefits and seeing what's best fit for the business.
So what would you perceive as being the main hurdles that a local authority would face if they wanted to take their infrastructure back in-house?
I think the main areas of consideration are their business and IT strategy. The two are frequently not interlinked as they should be, and it can be a significant effort to get the two to marry up and deliver what the business requires. Second is essentially the delivery of those services. Bringing that back in-house is not a minor hurdle to overcome. The service transition itself can be tumultuous, needs to be carefully considered and managed in how it's delivered. Finally, the strategic roadmap and the technology roadmap are key in identifying areas of opportunity for efficiency, improvement in services, reduction in costs, and facilitating a smooth transition towards their preferred end state.
I think, generally, you can underestimate the benefit of a roadmap and the strategy, I suppose. And it's something which, you might think, well, it may not be that important or they may not have time to do it, but actually it's really important to look at where you're heading and where you want to go, because otherwise it could be quite chaotic. And then everything suffers as a result, doesn't it?
Absolutely. One of the key benefits of the roadmap, both strategic and technical, is that it it should identify those areas of contention, both technology, change, capability, availability, and delivery. So if we can identify the fact that a major component or a major service element of the customer's infrastructure is subject to technical debt, is aging, is no longer fit for purpose, or could be delivered in a different way that gives them significant efficiencies, that could be identified and prioritized in the roadmap and can help smooth the way significantly in their transition to an in-house, more efficient managed service.
And it's really important, isn't it, for the business to link up to IT and for there to be that, cohesive view on what the business is looking to achieve, because business objectives aren't always IT objectives necessarily, are they, or service related objectives. So it's good to understand what the business is looking to do and achieve.
Absolutely. It's pointless trying to do much of anything without that golden thread between the business objectives, the key IT objectives, and how you deliver those from a technology and service viewpoint. If you're delivering a service that doesn't meet the requirements of the business, is it delivering any value?
Exactly, yeah. And IT can help you in so many different ways, can't it? So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think another of the challenges that local authorities, not just local authorities, industry in general faces, is bringing services back in-house has a potential skill gap in terms of the capability to deliver either current, updated, or new services. So we've seen a massive shift to cloud in some instances. For local authorities, that may be a challenge to keep the skills up to date or to ensure that people are aware of the opportunities that these new technologies offer. So they need to be aware of that fact as part of their transition planning, in that in some cases it may take longer than originally anticipated to deliver that capability and skill internally as compared to their current provider.
Yeah, I think it's easy, to underestimate how big that skills gap could be, particularly in, as you say, when, security and infrastructure and those areas, how much things have moved on in recent years and how fast those areas move.
Absolutely. It's ever changing. And training budgets alone have had to significantly increase, certainly within the MSP sector, within industry in general. So it's a definite point to consider for local authorities.
Yeah, I agree. So from your experience then, what would you suggest is the best approach for a local authority who maybe are in a position for wanting to take back some control, but maybe they feel like they're not ready yet?
I think one of the best things any organisation can do, this isn't just limited to local authorities, is take a good measured look at the services you deliver, how they map against your business strategy, and where you are in your technical debt and technical life cycle of your infrastructure and services in general. That can raise some potentially unpleasant surprises, but identifying them early enables prioritization through proper road mapping and proper portfolio management and governance before you come across them operationally. It's much better to be prepared, warned in advance, and plan appropriately than have a significant issue such as a skill gap, a significant area of technical debt, a strategic mismatch, or a completely missing capability crop up mid-transition.
Yeah, great. And they need to really also understand, I suppose, what they're trying to achieve from it, to understand whether it's likely to meet their expectation, I suppose. What's the driver for it? Is it cost savings, or is it control, or what are the reasons for it?
Absolutely. It goes back to that golden thread of business objectives, strategy, roadmap, service. There should be a clear line from end to end, helping clarify understanding of what is delivered, why it's delivered, who it's delivered to. And that will help the business prioritize order of change, order of migration, order of service transition, and generally the program end to end. One way local authorities, businesses in general, can smooth this transition is to take a bit of a more distance look at their organization. In a lot of cases, this can be achieved by taking on consultancy services to assess their IT landscape, to assess their strategy, to help them out with marrying up the business objectives to the strategy and delivering a clear roadmap which covers organizational strategy, technical service delivery, and lifecycle road mapping. Those will help the organization effectively prioritize not just the transition of services, but the preparation of those services for transition.
I think it massively affects probably the overall successfulness, if you like, of what they're trying to achieve by having somebody on board that knows the journey and can, take them down that path. I think that's probably really valuable in this case.
Absolutely.
So how do you think that a hybrid model of insourcing and outsourcing helps to ease in that transitional process? And have you got any examples of where that approach has been successful in the past?
It's the fairly traditional don't try and boil the ocean challenge that a lot of businesses have got, local authorities especially, because they deliver such a varied number of services to both internally and to the public. So identifying what those services are, how they can be transitioned, and at what time is key. In many cases, it's more efficient and cost effective to take a hybrid model, certainly to start with, and take a staged migration approach. So you take the roadmap, you take the strategic approach, you take the lifecycle management view of your technical debt, you prioritize appropriately, and then you select those areas in terms of business and technical priority. There are going to be specific areas where very few organizations are going to have those skills in-house. So traditionally, those have been things like certain software as a service applications. So your SAPs, your Salesforces, ServiceNow. Very few local authorities can afford to have specialists engaged full-time delivering business change, business transition, routine change to those systems. This is where they can achieve efficiencies, budgetary and responsiveness by hybridizing those roles, potentially farming those out to a partner. Whereas other services, so your service desk, infrastructure services, network services, can be a more straightforward journey from external to internal service provision.
It's important to look at the risk as well, I suppose, isn't it? Because clearly, it would, I suppose, be more risky to maybe take some of your more critical functions, maybe like security and other areas in-house, if you're not 100% sure of where you're going, and if you've got the right skills, than it would be to transition a service, which is, obviously much less of a risk to the business.
Absolutely. Security is a great shout. Even if you can deliver the training required in the given migration service transition period, there's not always a guarantee that your freshly minted security specialist is ready to take on that service.
Correct, yeah.
So a great way of managing that risk is to, again, have the hybrid approach, have a specialist engaged initially full-time, then as your own staff begin to pick up those skills, learn from that specialist, that can gradually be phased out and you can start to pull that service back in.
Yeah, do it over time as you get more confidence in what you're doing. Yeah.
One of the other challenges that local authorities can see when they're bringing their services in-house is the variability in resource requirements. So obviously you're going to have a significant upfront amount of effort to deliver a massive program of change. It can't be underestimated how much effort it takes to fully transition a service internally to externally and vice versa. Many of the same challenges are present. However, tying into that is the strategic and technical roadmap where the organization can identify periods of increased resource demand. So from the roadmap, that drives a program of change to the business where they can clearly identify a new server operating system coming up, a change to the way that security services are delivered, new cloud functionality being available to the business, changes to licensing, which may impact how they purchase certain services.
Very true, yeah.
And it's not always feasible or recommended to try and do all of that in-house. At times, there's just too much activity to handle. And that's where, again, the hybridized or supplementary resource available from partner organizations can certainly help them get over those humps and prevent or reduce the long-term cost of having sufficient resources for the busy times all the time. Rather run a bit more efficient and then bolster when required.
Yeah, it's easier to, I suppose it's easier for the MSP to scale up, I suppose, and adjust as needed rather than it is if it's in-house. So it does help. But one of the areas which I think hybrid can work really well for in general, but particularly for local authorities, I think because of the size, is the architecture and strategic functions. I think can be really valuable, can't it, to have that conduit, if you like, into the business that can go out there and get the buy-in, understand what the business is trying to achieve, which, an MSP may not necessarily be able to do the same thing. And it's good to have that middle ground, I think.
Absolutely. A full-time architecture practice can be prohibitively expensive for a local authority. In that case, it's definitely worth trying to at least temporarily buy in that experience, that capability into the business so you can have that engagement, that business relationship and stakeholder management from people that have earned the scars, been burned before, have kind of seen it and done it several times across several different industries. It gives a bit more assurance of the common and less common questions being asked, getting properly answered and incorporated into the strategy.
Completely agree. So what do you think are some of the common pitfalls that local authorities have encountered?
When you've farmed it out to a managed services provider, it can be hard to identify and unpick those services in order to transition them in the first place, never mind lifecycle manage them to the point that you're happy with. Another facet of the challenges is resistance to change. Moving from external service provision to internal service provision isn't just a technology change. It's an organizational change. It's a culture change.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Cantium Podcast in partnership with Public Sector Focus, please subscribe wherever you're listening or by visiting www.cantium.solutions.